They said first contact would be historic. They said humanity would finally take its place among the stars, join the civilized galaxy. What they didn't say was that the Galactic Empire expected us to bow. Not shake hands, not negotiate, bow. It started when their scout ship entered the solar system without asking. No signal, no warning, no diplomacy. Just parked itself above Earth's orbit and broadcasted a message. You are now subjects of the Galactic Sovereign Accord. Resistance will not be tolerated. That was the moment I knew something was off. I'm not a politician, not a general. Hell, I wasn't even a soldier anymore. Name's Reed, ex-special ops turned mechanic, scraping out a living fixing busted satellites and rigging together old tech for border stations near Mars. But when you've been to war, when you've bled and watched others die for a piece of dirt no one remembers, you learn to spot power when it's about to stomp on your throat. The Empire didn't come with gifts or peace. They came with warships the size of cities and a tone like we were insects. Their first envoy didn't even step out of his ship. Just beamed his arrogant face to the UN Council and said, "Your species will provide labor, resources, and biological samples. Cooperation ensures survival." That didn't sit well with anyone. But Earth's leaders, they smiled, talked about avoiding conflict. I watched them on a flickering monitor, each one nodding like trained dogs while that alien bastard, some high noble from the sovereign house of Viren, told us our freedom was a thing of the past. I should have just stayed out of it. Should have gone back to my outpost on Phobos, drank stale water, and fixed broken comms for cargo freighters. But I couldn't. Not after what happened to Madrid. The Empire used it as a demonstration. That's the word they used. Like it was a training drill. 1 second it was a city. The next, a crater. 10 million gone in a flash. Their orbit cannon didn't even make a sound. Just a soft pulse. Then silence. That was the price for delayed obedience. After that, something in me snapped. They thought we were weak because we didn't have ships like theirs. Thought we'd roll over because they'd wiped out worlds bigger than ours. But they didn't understand us. Not really. They saw our history. Wars, divisions, bloodshed, and figured we couldn't unite. What they missed was this. Nobody survives Earth without learning to fight dirty. I made a call to an old contact. Yuri, Black Ops, presumed dead after the Pacific skirmish. He answered on the third ring like he'd been waiting. I didn't even need to say much. Just, they made their move. We need to make ours. Yuri laughed, a low, bitter thing. About time someone said it. We weren't the only ones. All across the planet, ex-soldiers, hackers, rogue scientists, smugglers, people who never followed rules in the first place, started pulling strings. Not for Earth's governments, for humanity. Quietly, underground, furious. We didn't have tech that could match them, but we had desperation. We had creativity, and we had nothing to lose. We didn't aim to fight fair. We aimed to embarrass them. I'd seen war. Real war. Not this orbital posturing and press conference theater. I'd been in mud, blood, and smoke so thick you couldn't tell who was dead until they stopped screaming. But nothing. Nothing prepared me for what came after Madrid. 10 million people, gone like it meant nothing. Kids, parents, entire generations vaporized while the Galactic Empire watched from orbit like they were swatting flies. They didn't issue an apology. They didn't even flinch. All we got was a warning. Delay is disobedience. Disobedience is destruction. And our governments still bowed. That was the last straw. Earth was officially under Galactic Annexation Order 227-Delta, and I officially gave a damn. For the first time in a decade, I dug up my old gear. Still smelled of oil, fear, and fire. I didn't care. I was going back to war. We called it the Resistance, but it wasn't some flashy operation. No shiny logo, no motivational speeches. It was duct tape, scavenged tech, and blood oaths spoken in abandoned bunkers. The first crew was 6 of us. Me, Yuri, a rogue AI developer named Dante, and 3 ex-Marines, Thompson, Jiro, and Kellen. Each one had lost something. Family in Madrid, friends in the orbital strikes, their dignity maybe, and they wanted payback. Not a noble cause, not justice, just good, old-fashioned vengeance. Dante was the key. He'd been working on neural warfare tech before the government shut him down for being too dangerous. His code could infect a ship's AI, hijack its command systems, even loop its security into believing it was under friendly control. The Empire didn't encrypt their AI against us because they didn't believe we were smart enough to breach it. That was their first mistake. We called the operation Fool's Crown. Step 1 was getting a ship. Not some clunky mining freighter. We needed something with stealth capability, decent armor, and a long-range jump core. Something that could sneak into an Empire mothership and upload Dante's virus into their internal matrix. So we hit a black site in Earth orbit. Used to be a weather control station. Now it was a hidden launch dock for the Empire's collaborators. Guards were human, ex-military mercs wearing shiny armor and following alien orders like dogs. We didn't shoot our way in. We hacked the station's life support, dropped the oxygen by 20%, and waited. Once the guards passed out, we slipped in through the maintenance shafts like rats. It was cold, dark, no lights, just the sound of our breath and the hum of alien tech we didn't understand. The ship we stole was beautiful, sleek, like a blade built to cut through stars. Alien-made, modified by Earth's top engineers, with stealth fields that shimmered like glass and a core reactor that thrummed with raw energy. We renamed her Insurgent One. The Empire never even noticed she was missing. That's how full of themselves they were. They believed we wouldn't dare. With Dante's AI loaded and Yuri at the helm, we made our first jump, to Luna Outpost 9. That's where the Empire processed Earth's tribute. Metals, water, even people. They called them resources. We called them slaves. We didn't go in loud. We slipped in through the back, masked our signal to mimic one of their patrol cruisers, docked like we belonged. The guards didn't even check our papers. Why would they? We were primitive, harmless. Inside, the truth of Empire rule became clear. Earth wasn't the only one suffering. There were humans from other colonies, Mars, Europa, Titan, all shackled, collared, stripped of identity. The Empire had even started marking them. Barcodes burned into flesh, like we were livestock. Jiro lost it when he saw a girl no older than 12 cleaning alien waste off the floor while a 6-armed bastard kicked her in the ribs. Jiro broke protocol, broke formation, and broke that creature's neck with his bare hands. No regrets. We didn't leave quietly after that. Thompson detonated the main hangar while I uploaded Dante's code into the station's AI. Within minutes, lights went red, alarms blared, and every display screen started flashing a simple message in bold Earth text. Humanity is not your property. We rescued 117 prisoners, put them aboard Insurgent One, and jumped before the Empire could react. Their warships showed up 6 minutes later. Too late. The message had already gone viral. Every slave processing station across the solar system was hit with the virus. It didn't just display defiant slogans. It jammed their orders, reversed their drone protocols, and crashed their security grids. One station even self-destructed after the AI glitched its reactor control. It was the first real blow against the Empire. And they noticed. That's when the bounty went up. 500,000 credits for my head. They called me the Vermin General, said I was spreading disease across their perfect order. I took that as a compliment. But the next hit was personal. They found Yuri's sister. She'd been working as a translator for the Empire, feeding us information from the inside. When they realized she was the leak, they didn't just kill her. They broadcast it, live, across every human colony, stripped her down, labeled her traitor, then spaced her. No helmet, no suit, just pure vacuum. Yuri didn't speak for 2 days after that. When he finally did, he said, "No more sneaking, no more hiding. We make them bleed." We planned the next strike like it was the last one we'd ever do. Target, sovereign flagship Vandrex, the pride of the Empire's Earth fleet. They said it was invincible, 6 energy shields, 20 plasma lances, a command crew made of genetically perfected tacticians bred in artificial wombs. It floated in high orbit, untouched, untouchable. We didn't need to destroy it. We needed to humiliate it. The plan was insane. Dante would upload a second stage AI, this one more aggressive. It wouldn't just jam their systems. It would rewrite them, flip their shield harmonics, redirect their weapons, and force their own cameras to record every humiliating second. We approached under stealth. Insurgent 1, silent, invisible, riding on the thermal wake of a civilian supply barge. The flagship didn't even flinch. Once we were close enough, Dante pulsed the virus through a microburst laser, right into the Vandrex's maintenance relay. At first, nothing happened. Then, chaos. Their lights flickered, shields dropped, targeting systems reversed, lances started firing on their own escort ships. Then their communications screamed with feedback, alien officers shouting over glitching displays. And finally, the screens. Every monitor aboard that flagship lit up with a single video. The moment they vaporized Madrid. Over and over again. But now, it was spliced with footage of their own ships burning, their own officers panicking, their slaves rising. The whole galaxy saw it. The Vandrex lost 40% of its crew before they managed to regain partial control. And we left our mark. A crude human middle finger, digitally painted across their flagship's outer hull in fluorescent nanopaint. That broke them. For the first time, the Empire looked human in the worst way. Fallible, afraid, and foolish. The next week, rebellions sparked on Europa, then on Ceres, then Ganymede. Not organized, not led, just humans refusing to be quiet. And the Empire, for all its size and power, didn't know how to handle defiance without annihilation. But we were no longer afraid to be annihilated. We'd already lost everything. They taught us fear. We answered with rage. After the Vandrex debacle, the Empire stopped calling us insects. They had new names for us now: contaminants, insurgents, biological threats. Their language changed because they no longer saw us as beneath them. They saw us as dangerous. That fear? That was our first real victory. Not ships, not territory. Fear. But fear makes monsters out of monsters, and they didn't retreat. No, they doubled down. The next few weeks were hell. They stopped pretending. No more warnings, no more staged demonstrations. Entire mining colonies were slagged from orbit, no questions asked. Human workers, loyal or not, were rounded up and sterilized. They wanted to crush the virus we'd become. But they didn't realize something. You can't crush what's already been broken. We were scattered, fragmented, but we were everywhere. Little fires lighting up across the stars. Resistance wasn't a name anymore. It was a virus, a whisper, an infection in the system. One we didn't need to control. We just needed to feed it. But you can only run so long before the Empire gets close enough to hurt. That happened on the outpost at Titan's Grasp. It wasn't a base. It was a cave system. Old smuggler routes carved into ice and metal by criminals long before the Empire showed up. We'd been using it as a waypoint to move rescued prisoners and contraband tech across the belt. I was there with Yuri and Dante when the first shell hit. We didn't hear it. Sound doesn't carry in space. But we felt it, a deep tremor through the rock, like the world itself had flinched. They found us, Dante muttered, fingers already dancing across his makeshift interface. How the hell did they— Doesn't matter, Yuri cut in, voice cold. They're not leaving alive. We had maybe 30 fighters, a few retooled pulse rifles, some ancient ground mines, one hacked Walker mech missing half its plating, against a kill squad from the Empire's elite Vanguard Legion. They came down in black ships, sleek, fast, surgical, no lights, no insignia, just death. We didn't stand a chance, and we knew it. That didn't stop us. I still remember the moment I looked one of them in the face. Not some noble-bred overlord, just a soldier, alien, tall, skin like obsidian glass, eyes glowing faint blue. He aimed his plasma carbine at a wounded girl crawling for cover. He never pulled the trigger. I did. I fired until the gun clicked dry. Then I picked up a broken pipe and kept swinging until my arms went numb. That's what it took. Not strategy. Not technology. Rage. The caves ran red. Yuri led the survivors through the narrow back passages, laying traps as we went. Mines, EMP bursts, explosive foam, anything that could slow them. And for a while, it worked. But they were faster. Smarter. They adapted. They cornered us in one of the deep chambers. No exit, no cover, just ice walls and desperation. Dante was bleeding. 2 ribs shattered. Jiro was gone. Kellen, too. Only 9 of us left. Yuri looked at me and said, "Give me 20 seconds." He had a detonator in his hand. Big one. Would bring the whole cave down on their heads, bury them in their own arrogance, but he needed time to wire the override so it wouldn't trigger prematurely and take us with it. So I did the only thing I could. I bought him that time. I stepped out into the open, covered in blood and ice, holding a pulse rifle that had maybe 10 rounds left. They paused. 10 of them, armored head to toe, eyes like dead stars. I grinned. "Welcome to Earth, assholes." Then I opened fire. I didn't aim, didn't hide. I ran straight into them, screaming for Madrid, for Luna, for every colony burned, every child branded, every voice silenced. 2 went down, maybe 3. Then I felt the hit. Plasma burns don't feel like fire. They feel like your soul's being torn out in strips. My side lit up in pain. I dropped, mouth full of blood, eyes blurry. But then, boom. Yuri's charges went off. The whole chamber shook. Ice collapsed. Metal screamed. And just like that, they were gone. And so was Yuri. He didn't make it out. His body's still somewhere beneath Titan's crust. He never ran, never flinched. Just hit the button and smiled. He died the way he lived, making the Empire pay. We escaped through a vent barely wide enough for a grown man, crawled through ice and sewage for hours before we reached the emergency dock. Only 7 of us now. No supplies, no med kits, just pain. Insurgent 1 was still cloaked in orbit. Dante remotely triggered the pickup. When the ship's bay doors opened, I collapsed. The last thing I saw was Thompson, silent, bloodied, lifting me like a sack of broken bones. I woke up 2 days later with stitches in my gut and fire in my chest. First thing I asked, "Did we get any of them?" Thompson just nodded. Every single bastard. We didn't call it a victory, but it wasn't a loss either. The Empire tried to erase us that day, and all they did was make martyrs. Yuri's death spread like wildfire. His face became the symbol of Earth's rebellion. Not polished, not photoshopped. Just a scarred soldier in battered armor, holding a detonator with a smirk that said, "You bleed too." They tried to ban the image across Empire networks. Didn't work. It was everywhere, graffitied on walls, printed on resistance gear, projected in holograms across occupied cities. Every time they tried to erase him, 100 more images popped up. They didn't understand that killing one of us didn't scare the rest. It ignited us. After Titan's grasp, we changed tactics. No more large bases, no more fixed positions. We became shadows, moving targets, saboteurs, ghosts. We struck where they felt safe. Empire officers began disappearing from their beds. Supply routes were sabotaged. Communication arrays fried. Even their high nobles weren't immune. One of them exploded mid-speech when a resistance drone dropped a micro-bomb from a maintenance duct. They called us terrorists. We called it equal footing. Meanwhile, Dante's virus kept evolving. It wasn't just jamming systems anymore. It was spreading between ships like a flu, learning, adapting. He called it Echo. Echo wasn't just code. It was vengeance encoded into data. Every time a ship was infected, it played a recording. Just 3 seconds of audio. A child screaming. Then silence. Madrid's legacy. They tried to trace the source. Couldn't. Echo had no core server, no control center. It lived across hundreds of stolen satellites, old orbital stations, even inside Empire tech they didn't know we'd compromised. And then something amazing happened. The slaves started fighting back, not just humans, other species. The ones the Empire had broken long before we ever reached the stars. They saw us. Saw that we bled but didn't kneel. Saw that we were small, but unafraid. And for the first time in centuries, they believed it was possible. The Empire was cracking, one insult at a time, one explosion at a time, one human scream echoing in their pristine corridors at a time. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were legend. We'd made them bleed. We'd shaken the image they wore like armor, that illusion of invincibility they paraded across the stars. But shaking an empire isn't the same as breaking it. And the Empire? They were preparing to remind us. Dante intercepted the first transmission while running echo diagnostics through a stolen relay hub near Neptune's shadow. The message wasn't directed at Earth. It wasn't even in Galactic Common. It was encoded in something older, deeper, the sovereign tongue, used only by the elite in the Empire's inner command. A language most humans didn't even know existed. But Dante? He'd cracked it months ago. I remember the moment he played it for me. We were alone in the dim bridge of Insurgent One, cold recycled air hissing around us, lights low to preserve energy. His voice was flat, cold, but his eyes? They carried something else, something close to fear. They're calling in the Ascendants. That meant nothing to me at first. Then he showed me what that meant. The Ascendants weren't soldiers. They weren't even generals. They were purifiers, genetically and cybernetically enhanced executioners, built for one thing, extermination, used only when the Empire no longer considered a population redeemable. They didn't fight wars. They erased species. Earth had been moved to that list. The message included detailed orders, sterilization of all resistant biomass, controlled annihilation of planetary systems to prevent meme spread of rebellion ideologies, and the initiation of Protocol Pale Sky. I didn't need a damn translation for that part. They were going to wipe the slate clean. Humanity wasn't just a nuisance anymore. We were an infection. And their cure was fire. We had no chance against them. Not head-on. We knew that. So we did what humans have always done when outnumbered and outgunned. We made it personal. Dante mapped the route of the Ascendant fleet. It wasn't a straight charge toward Earth. They were stopping, pausing to consolidate supplies, rearm, and coordinate with elite units. Their arrogance was still intact. They didn't think we had the guts to come to them. We picked the weakest node on their route, a world called Kiran 7. It was a fortress planet, yes, but one used more for logistics than warfare. A rest stop for death. We wouldn't hit the front. We'd hit their belly, and we'd hit it hard. Thompson planned the assault. Ex-Marine, tactician, heartless when he needed to be. He built it like a revenge letter. every movement, every angle dripping with spite. We came in from the dead side of the moon, Insurgent One silent and cold, masked as a mining vessel gone rogue. The defenses didn't blink. They'd seen hundreds of ships just like it. Runaways, smugglers, scavengers looking to refuel or trade. We got inside without a single shot fired. What followed wasn't war, it was vengeance. We split into 3 teams. Dante went for the control hubs, server towers that ran orbital defenses and planetary scans. Kellen and his demolition crew headed for the supply vaults, racks stacked with weaponized nanites, cryo-munitions, and enough energy cells to ignite a small moon. And me? I went with Thompson into the barracks. We didn't go in to fight. We went in to broadcast. Thompson carried a small drone the size of a skull. Inside, it had a recorded message. 1 minute long. A mix of visuals and voice, all of it raw. Footage of Madrid. Children screaming in Luna cages. A woman's hands reaching through a force field as fire swallowed her family. Then our message. This is humanity. You showed us fear. We answered with fire. You showed us order. We answered with chaos. We are your reckoning. The drone launched seconds before the first alarms went off. It reached every screen in the complex, then bounced its signal off 2 rogue satellites. By the time the Ascendants heard about the attack, the galaxy had already seen it. We didn't destroy Karen 7. We humiliated it. The entire base detonated in a cascade of fuel ignitions, chain reaction warhead overloads, and synchronized AI subroutines that made their own systems self-destruct. It was a planet-wide embarrassment, one that echoed. By the time we escaped back into deep void, the Empire was scrambling to hide the footage, scrambling to deny the attack. But it was too late. The illusion cracked again. More colonies started rising up, not just human, alien workers who had been enslaved for centuries. They didn't trust us. Not yet. But they saw something in us they hadn't seen in themselves for generations. Defiance. And defiance is contagious. But the Ascendants? They didn't care about perception. They responded fast. They torched Europa's rebel cell, crushed the methane cities on Titan. One by one, our allies vanished under their advance. Cold, efficient, absolute. The last warning came from Ceres, a resistance leader named Rado, one of the few alien species who actually stood with us, sent a distress call before going silent. I answered it personally. Insurgent One jumped into Ceres' orbit expecting wreckage. Instead, we found something worse. Silence. No wreckage, no fire, just quiet. No energy readings, no life signs. We sent a probe. Ceres was still intact, surface unscarred, but its people were gone. Every single one. No bodies, no signs of battle, just silence. They hadn't killed them. They'd erased them. That's what the Ascendants were. Not warriors, endings. I stared out that viewport for hours. Didn't eat, didn't sleep, just watched the dead rock drift and tried to feel something that wasn't rage. I couldn't. By then, our numbers were down to under 50 fighters, spread thin across dozens of hideouts. Supplies were running out. Echo was starting to fragment under security countermeasures. The AI was still clever, still biting, but the Empire was learning how to adapt. And yet, even then, in that hopeless place, I knew we weren't done. Because we weren't fighting to win anymore. We were fighting so they'd never forget us. Fighting so the next species they tried to enslave would remember the mad little mammals from Earth who made them look like fools. Thompson said it best that night. He sat beside me in the dark of the bridge, watching the void churn with dead stars, and said, They'll write about us someday. Not in their history books. Number in their nightmares. And I believed him. Because we weren't done yet, not even close. After Ceres, the game changed. We'd thought we were fighting an empire built on power, on fleets, weapons, and soldiers. But that was just the skin, the surface. The real engine behind the empire wasn't force. It was control. Control of minds, history, culture, control of what people feared and what they believed they couldn't do. The Ascendants didn't just kill bodies. They scrubbed memory, erased entire histories. Rado and his people? It wasn't just their voices that had gone silent. It was their existence. Galactic databases were wiped, maps were redrawn, and Ceres, now listed as uninhabitable due to magnetic instability. Like they'd never lived there at all. That hit harder than a plasma round. We weren't just fighting for freedom anymore. We were fighting for remembrance, and that meant going where no human had gone before, into the heart of the Empire. Dante called it the Nexus. Not a place, really, more like a system. A cluster of planets orbiting an artificial star, wrapped in quantum firewalls, and guarded by a fleet so vast its own shadow could black out moons. This was where the Empire's knowledge lived, its archives, its digital consciousness, history, culture, identity, all stored in the Nexus, and hidden in that data was the truth. Not just about what they'd done to Earth, but what they'd done to everyone. We couldn't destroy the Nexus. That would be suicide, but we didn't need to. We needed to crack it open, let the truth spill out, let the galaxy see. It took us weeks to find a back door, an ancient communications satellite, long abandoned, still drifting near the outer edge of the system. Obsolete, forgotten, just like us. That's how we got in. We piggybacked a signal through the satellite's decayed systems, wrapped Echo in layers of synthetic data, then injected it directly into the Empire's archival interface. It wasn't elegant, it was savage. But it worked. For 6 minutes, the Nexus bled. Their data firewalls trembled, auto-locks failed, and we got a glimpse, just a sliver of what they'd hidden. And what we saw? It broke something in all of us, because humanity wasn't the first. Madrid wasn't the first demonstration. And the Ascendants? They weren't executioners. They were cleaners. Whenever a species got too proud, too united, too dangerous, the Ascendants came. And wiped them, not just physically, but entirely. Erased their languages, their records, burned out every trace until the only thing left was silence. And then, the Empire filled the void with a new narrative. Primitive, violent, extinct by their own failures. We'd always wondered why the galaxy was so quiet, so homogeneous, so full of cowardice and apathy. Now we knew. The Empire had been editing reality for millennia, one truth at a time. That was the night Dante stopped being a programmer. He became a weapon. He rewrote Echo from the inside, gave it teeth. Not just a virus now, but a story. One designed to slip past every defense, hide in entertainment streams, commercial packets, education nodes. Echo would tell the truth. In music, in art, in snippets, in code. Wherever a screen flickered, the truth would appear. Uninvited, unfiltered. First, it was one video. Grainy footage of the Ascendants vaporizing a rebel city while children screamed in the background. Then another. An old noble admitting on record that truth is only useful if it serves structure. And then more. Clips, voices, deaths, proof, everywhere. The Empire panicked. They started burning screens, pulling satellites, scrambling internal networks. But it was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. They called it a reality plague. We called it vindication. But it came at a price. They found us. Not just our ship. Insurgent One had long since been abandoned for security. They found one of our old caches on Io, a relay node we'd forgotten about. Sloppy? We'd gotten too bold. The hit squad didn't come with guns. They came with something worse. Disruptors. Weapons that unraveled flesh on a molecular level. Clean. Quiet. No mess. Just absence. Kellen died trying to hold the door. Didn't scream. Just turned, smiled, and threw a last charge at their feet. Boom. Then silence. We lost 4 others that day. And Echo? It started breaking down. The Empire had seeded counter-AI routines across its infrastructure. Smart ones, adaptable, ruthless. For every stream we infected, they silenced 3. For every truth we told, they fed 10 lies. They started spreading propaganda that humans had created the Ascendants, that Earth was a rogue species, artificial, designed for chaos, a failed experiment. And the worst part? Some people believed it. That was their power, not weapons, not ships. Narrative. But we weren't done yet. Because Dante had a backup, a kill switch, a last resort, a worm buried deep inside Echo. It didn't spread information, it stole it. It started harvesting data from every node it touched, images, reports, recordings, and storing it inside one isolated capsule, encrypted with quantum locks and sealed in a dormant drive. We called it the Last Testament. And we were going to deliver it ourselves, straight to the Galactic Assembly. That's where laws were passed, deals made, treaties signed, the theater of diplomacy where the Empire pretended to be civil. They thought we'd never dare step foot there. They thought wrong. We stole a diplomatic cruiser, forged credentials, used Echo to spoof our biosignatures, and we flew right into their jewel of power, the Assembly Spire on Arendor Prime. It was beautiful. Marble towers floating on oceans of light. Gravity defied, logic bent. A place built to awe, to intimidate. But we weren't there to be impressed. We walked into the central chamber, Thompson, Dante, and me. All 3 of us wore stolen robes. All 3 of us carried concealed explosives. If it failed, we'd go out with fire. But it didn't fail. We made it to the floor. And Dante triggered the broadcast. Every screen in the chamber lit up, not with protocol, not with order, but with truth. The Last Testament spoke, not in our voices, but in the voices of the dead. Madrid, Ceres, Luna, Karen 7, names and faces, screams and silence, every crime laid bare in perfect clarity. They tried to shut it down. Failed. They tried to silence us. We stood tall. And when it ended, we didn't beg. We didn't plead. We simply said, "Now you know, what happens next is on you." And then we walked out. No guns, no escape plan. We didn't need one, because we'd already won. They didn't shoot us. When we walked out of the Galactic Assembly Chamber, robes billowing, explosives still strapped beneath, we expected the blast doors to slam shut. Guns raised, no last words, no trials. But they didn't shoot us, they just watched. Some in silence, others in disbelief, and a few, just a few, stood up. The broadcast worked. The Last Testament reached not just Arendor Prime, but every system tethered to the Assembly's feed. There were backups, delays, scrubbers, but Echo had evolved. It bypassed firewalls. It cracked time-gated content filters. It even hijacked medical monitors in hospitals and portable assistant drones in refugee camps. Where there was light, there was truth. And the galaxy finally saw what the Empire really was. A system built on silence, an organism that fed on memory and fear. It didn't just crush rebellion, it erased identity. Whole species reduced to footnotes, cultures rewritten to fit the Empire's approved narrative. And humanity? We were their mistake. We didn't shut up. We didn't break clean. We clung to anger like a weapon. By the time we reached Insurgent 1, parked deep in the underbelly of a derelict moon station 2 systems away, echo reports were flooding in. On Draxel V, protesters torched Empire statues. On Kenneth, a battalion of conscripted aliens defected mid-battle and raised the human sigil on their armor. On Rylet Prime, noble houses began holding truth tribunals to avoid the fallout of public wrath. The Empire called it sedition. We called it a reckoning. But nothing, not even a fire this big, burns forever. And the Empire wasn't done yet. The Ascendants hadn't fallen back. They were quiet. Too quiet. Dante didn't like it. "They're planning something," he muttered, chewing on data strings from echo returns. "Something big. They're purging." "What do you mean?" I asked. He looked up, eyes bloodshot. "Not people, files. They're trying to erase themselves." It made sense. If they couldn't control the truth, they'd eliminate every trace of it, clean up the blood, burn the books, rewrite the walls. And if they couldn't rebuild the lie, they'd collapse the whole damn structure and take us all with them. It was a kill switch, not just on Earth or Ceres or Madrid, on everything. Dante traced the command node back to a station called Verity's End. Fitting name. Buried in deep space beyond mapped territory, it wasn't a military base. It was the heart of the lie, a planet-sized archive with access to every quantum-fed record in the Empire's history. If they purged it, history would shatter. Wars would vanish, massacres undone, whole races rewritten again. We couldn't let that happen. But this time, we weren't alone. We sent out a coded call through Echo. A simple message bounced across thousands of systems. Verity's End. They're erasing the truth. Join us or forget everything. We didn't expect much. Just survivors, maybe a handful of desperate fighters. What we got was a fleet. 20 ships from rebel cells, 5 converted freighters turned gunships, and 1 ancient dreadnought, half covered in rust, crewed by old warriors from a dozen worlds who'd lost too much to let the Empire bury it. We called them the Remembered. Each bore names and markings long outlawed by the Empire. Tattoos, war cries, songs written in languages thought extinct. They didn't come to survive. They came to burn history into the stars. Verity's End wasn't guarded by ships. It was guarded by silence. No communications, no lights, just a dead field of drifting satellites and dormant weapons platforms. We knew it was a trap. We didn't care. We pushed in. The first to fall was the dreadnought. EMP mines tore through her belly, sent her tumbling into the station's gravity well. She didn't scream. She sang, broadcasting a battle hymn in 7 languages as her hull cracked open, her last transmission. We remember. Then flame. We breached the station using compressed asteroid fragments, hollowed out and filled with shock troops. No elegance, just force. I was one of the first through the breach. Pulse rifle in hand, bones still aching from Ceres, rage wound tight in my chest. Verity's End wasn't like other Empire stations. It was cold, sterile, no ornamentation, just corridors of white light and soft whispers echoing through metal. It wasn't guarded by soldiers. It was guarded by machines. Tall, eyeless constructs with limbs like razors and AI minds tuned to purify. They didn't talk. They judged. They moved like liquid hate, slicing through our ranks with mechanical precision. Jiro died beside me. His chest opened from throat to sternum in a blink. I put 6 shots into the machine's core before it stopped twitching. We fought our way toward the central data vault, Dante's target. If we could reach the heart, we could upload a memory lock, a final backup of all stolen truths, encrypted and spread across the galaxy, impossible to erase. But the Empire wasn't going down without spite. Inside the vault, we found her. A sovereign. One of the architects of the lie. She stood there, wrapped in light, skin like polished chrome, eyes empty. "You were never meant to last," she said, voice soft, almost kind. "You were chaos wrapped in flesh, an echo of lesser stars." I walked up to her, bleeding, shaking, tired beyond words, and I said, "That's the thing about echoes. The louder the silence, the harder they hit." Then I shot her in the mouth. Dante uploaded the memory lock while the rest of us held the corridor. Screams, smoke, metal rain. By the time he finished, only 10 of us were still breathing. The lock triggered. The station began to collapse. Self-purge, data destruction, fire across every corridor. We ran, fought, bled, and somehow we made it back to Insurgent 1, watched as Verity's End tore itself apart, watched as the stars blinked, one by one, sending out pieces of truth, of memory, of us. The Empire didn't fall that day. Not all of it, but it cracked. And inside that crack we planted something no machine, no sovereign, no ascendant could kill. Legacy. We didn't celebrate. Not after Verity's End burned. Too many names went into that fire. Too many screams still clung to the walls of Insurgent 1, echoes from the dying who'd come knowing they wouldn't leave. And even though the memory lock worked, though we saw the signs of it blooming across the stars like wildfire, there was no victory parade. Just scars. Galactic channels began calling it the Shattering. History fragments popping up in unexpected places. School modules corrupted with old war footage. Religious archives suddenly showing images of forbidden gods. Children's hollow toys playing screams instead of lullabies. The Empire tried to blame us, said we'd triggered a data apocalypse. They weren't wrong. We did. But this wasn't destruction. This was restoration. They had buried the truth so deep, they forgot what would happen when someone dug it up. Worlds began to change. Minor systems stopped paying tribute. The smaller species, those broken down and bred into compliance, began carving their names back into city walls. On Arlan 3, we saw the first open rebellion led not by humans, but by the Rithari, long thought extinct. Their chant shook the stars. "We were lied to." And still, the Empire clung to life. A sovereign named Arctix took command after Verity's End fell. He wasn't a politician. He was a purebred warlord, one of the few who had never tasted loss. And he made his intentions clear. If they couldn't control history anymore, they'd settle for ending the future. They called it Scorch Doctrine. The logic was simple. If Earth was the source of the infection, they'd burn Earth. But not just with ships. They unleashed something older, something worse. They called it the Cleaners. Not machines, not soldiers. Bioweapons, living plagues, tailor-made to identify human DNA and dismantle it. Not just to kill, but to erase. Bones would dissolve, memories would rot, even artifacts would corrode on touch. We learned about them too late. By the time Echo flagged the transmission, 2 colony moons were already gone. I watched the footage. People screaming as their shadows peeled off the ground and consumed them. Fathers holding children who melted into ash before they could cry. Entire forests, cities, oceans turned to sludge. And then silence. No survivors. No graves. Just a report. Compliance achieved. That was when I lost Thompson. He didn't say goodbye. Just took a dropship, 5 men, and flew straight into a cleaner seed ship over Mevrak Ridge. He detonated his core mid-entry, vaporized the seed and himself with it. It bought Earth another month. That's all. We needed to do more. But it wasn't that simple anymore. Humanity was splintering. Some groups didn't want to fight. They wanted to negotiate, sign terms, make peace. They said truth was dangerous, that we'd pushed too far, that maybe the Empire had a point. They weren't traitors, just tired. But tired people do stupid things. One cell, we called them the Pale Suns, hijacked a beacon meant for Echo and tried to send a surrender package. Full coordinates, hidden bases, resistance movement details. They wanted to trade it for limited sovereignty, for safety, for silence. Dante found the breach and stopped it just in time. But the damage was done. We were no longer just fighting the Empire. We were fighting ourselves. You see, the deeper we cut into the Empire's body, the more our own infection spread. Old grudges returned. Different resistance groups fought over who would rebuild. Some wanted democracy, others wanted isolation. Some wanted revenge so total it bordered on genocide. And Earth? It wasn't united anymore. Not really. Half the planet still believed the Empire's lies. The other half wanted the stars handed over on a plate. Only a sliver, those who had fought, bled, and lost, understood what came next. Not peace, not order, but responsibility. Legacy isn't about glory. It's about what you leave behind when your name is scraped off the wall. And that meant one final move, one final strike. Dante called it the Mirror Protocol. He had one last payload hidden deep in Echo's code. A trigger built to reflect any incoming cleaner signature back to its source. If launched, it would cause every active cleaner organism in the galaxy to target sovereign DNA instead. A complete inversion. A species switch. It wouldn't just kill the elites, it would hunt them. Use it, I told him. Let it rip. He didn't move, just stared at the data as if it were a loaded gun aimed at his own soul. It's genocide, he said. They built it, I replied. Let them taste it. Children would die. So did ours. We argued for hours, shouted, punched walls, spit blood and grief at each other. And then he looked at me, not with hate, not with rage, but with something colder. Pity. You're not fighting for humanity anymore, he said. You're just trying to win. And he was right. I didn't care about survival at that point. I cared about making sure the monsters felt what we had felt. But Dante? He made a third choice. He modified the Mirror Protocol, rebuilt it into a genetic gate. Instead of inverting targets, it would lock the cleaners, trap them into stasis, freeze their replication cycle, and stop them permanently. It wouldn't kill the Empire. It would end their most powerful weapon. For good. But to activate it, someone had to upload the trigger manually from the core of the central cleaner ship. Buried in Empire territory, orbiting the forbidden planet of Zarkon. A suicide mission. And he volunteered. I told him no. He didn't listen. I woke up the next cycle to find him gone. No note. Just one line written in old Earth text, carved into the console. Let them remember who stopped the plague. Dante never came back. But the cleaners stopped. All at once. Froze mid-motion. Everywhere. Earth breathed again. We lost a friend. They lost their god. The Empire didn't announce defeat. They couldn't. But their voice went silent. Their fleets withdrew. Their propaganda shriveled. And in that vacuum, we built something new. Not perfect, not clean. A million voices screaming over each other in the ashes. But free. And that was enough. No statues were built. Not for me, not for Dante, not for Yuri or Thompson or the 10,000 others who bled for something bigger than themselves. No marble pillars, no golden plaques, just names, scratched into the hulls of rusting ships or whispered in taverns between drags of bitter-smelling vapor. And honestly, that's how it should be. Because the war wasn't about heroes. It was about reminders, about making damn sure the galaxy never forgot what we paid to be heard. The Empire didn't collapse in one final glorious bang. There was no last stand, no grand surrender. It eroded, like a body rotting from the inside out, too proud to admit it was already dead. The sovereigns tried to hold power, but their fear made them sloppy. They turned on each other. Executions became routine. Civil wars sparked in core systems. Planets that had once bowed without question began closing their gates and sealing their skies. They called it the Silent Fall. It took less than 2 years for their network to fracture beyond repair. And Earth? We didn't rise like a phoenix. We crawled, scarred, divided, angry. Half the population wanted to rebuild. The other half wanted retribution. There were riots, assassinations, whole cities torn in half over who was to blame. Some said we'd provoked the war. Others said we hadn't gone far enough. Some worshipped the resistance. Others hated us for bringing the Empire's wrath. I didn't speak at any of the gatherings, didn't join the Reconstruction Councils or sit on the New World boards. I didn't care about politics. I cared about graves. I spent months walking the battle sites. From Mars' broken ridges to the ice pits of Titan, I walked. Found what was left. Buried who I could. Marked the rest. Madrid was still a crater. But someone had etched words into the stone near the edge. No names, no date. Just, they thought silence would save them. That stuck with me. The ones who hid, who obeyed, who whispered instead of shouting, they died too. Being quiet never saved anyone. One day I found myself back on Luna Station 7, where it all started for me. The old hangars were full of weeds now, rusted terminals, broken drones. But inside the main control chamber, someone had left a message looping on an old screen. Dante's voice. I didn't expect it, didn't even remember the relay being there. Maybe he recorded it before Zarkon. Maybe he sent it after. Didn't matter. His voice was tired, real, not a speech, not a code. Just him. If you're hearing this, we didn't lose. That doesn't mean we won, but we weren't erased. And that's something. They built an empire on the idea that no one would remember, so keep remembering, even when it hurts. Especially then. That's how we win. Not with bombs, with memory. I sat there for hours, listening to it on loop. And for the first time since the war ended, I cried. Not for me, for all of it. The rage, the grit, the faces I couldn't recall even though I tried, the smell of burnt metal, the feeling of a trigger, the sound of silence after a shot that changed everything. It wasn't glory. It was a burden, and it was mine to carry. I left Luna that night, alone. No fleet, no crew, just a rusted shuttle and a destination. The edge of mapped space. A place with no name, just empty stars and the whisper of possibility. Because the war taught me something. It wasn't about who won, it was about who survived with their soul intact. About who chose to build after the fire. I knew people back on Earth who were already laying plans for a galactic alliance. Not another empire, they swore it. Something better, something fair. Maybe they were right. Maybe they were just tired of war. I didn't join them, but I didn't stop them either, because someone had to try, and someone else had to remember why it mattered. So here I am, drifting through the dark. A soldier with no flag, no orders, just stories. The kind no one wants to write down. Too messy, too bloody, too real. But I write them anyway. On ship walls, on old crates, in binary pulses across quiet relays, not so I can be remembered. So they will be. Yuri, Thompson, Dante, the girl from Ceres who painted our symbol in her blood, the crew who never made it off Verity's end, the martyrs and monsters and those in between. They mattered. And maybe, in some distant system, a kid with a curious mind will find a fragment, a clip, a name. And maybe that'll be enough to stop the next empire before it starts. Maybe not. But I'll keep writing. Because that's the one thing they were always afraid of. Not our weapons, not our anger, but our refusal to be forgotten. We are humanity, and we made the galaxy remember us. The hard way, the only way, our way.